What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and I'm going to go ahead and talk about the most surprising track I've experienced in a long while, that being Cleveland, Burke Lakefront Airport. You might be thinking, how can someone who really loves the glory days of kart be surprised by the fact that Cleveland is a great track? Cleveland was a staple of the kart calendar for a number of years and is a fantastic event, and I will gladly be one of those guys who will say IndyCar should be racing at Cleveland, and the fact that they aren't is a travesty. So how could that guy be surprised that Cleveland is a good track? Because that guy knows Cleveland is a good track because he's seen it numerous times. Well, it's because of the fact that throughout sim racing history, there really hasn't been a quality version of Cleveland available. Maybe in the earlier years, IndyCar Racing 2 had it as official content, obviously, and that track, once it got converted into various other platforms like the probably Sports Car GT back in the day, F1 Challenge, R Factor, Assetto Corsa going through the time frame. Towards the earlier years, yeah, it probably held up, but by the time you get into R Factor and Assetto Corsa, you throw in Automobilista in there as well, the original. The version of Cleveland that existed for sim racing traced its roots back to IndyCar Racing 2, and it always started showing its age. By the time you end up with R Factor, it was a track that was devoid of anything at all, and it really quite showed. I mean, yes, it's an airport. It's two runways, a taxiway, basically. There's nothing around. But at the same time, you could distinctly tell that the track was just not up to snuff in those games by that time frame. They were flat, they were pancakes, they were devoid of anything and everything, or alternatively, to try and make them not flat, devoid pancakes, they often featured the absolutely ridiculous fake bumps that I don't know how in the world we ever tolerated in hindsight, but somehow we did. Overall, Cleveland was just not a great track in sim racing at all, and therefore my time with Cleveland was 100% limited to the time spent flinging champ cars around Cleveland, because that's the thing that you do, because Cleveland was that great of an event. Now that those impediments have been removed, I am absolutely shocked by just how much fun this track is. Not just with 900 horsepower awesomeness that are champ cars, but literally with anything you throw at it. The more time I spend trying different things, the more I come to the realization that, wait a minute, there's a very valid point of comparison that had never entered my mind at all. One of my personal favorite circuits out there in sim racing is Sebring. It's one of my favorite circuits in general anyways. Guess what? That also is an airport circuit. It's flat as a pancake, bumpy as can be, to the point where they got their own hashtag. It's made up of originally runways and taxiways, and yeah, it's got very much that same type of feel, where if you don't know where you're going, yeah, you'll probably be a little confused where you're actually supposed to be going, but eventually you understand it, and you come to understand that, hey, yeah, this is really legitimately a great circuit. This track is almost entirely Sebring distilled into just a simpler form. You start off with the hairpin, and here at Cleveland, it's 800 miles wide and makes for some of the best dive bombing in the history of dive bombing, or at least the best history of dive bombing since World War II. You have the corners that are often 90-degree corners on paper and look like they're 90-degree corners, but at the same time, in actual application, don't play out anything like 90-degree corners, and also lead to fantastic passing opportunities. You don't have Sunset Bend. There is no Sunset Bend here at Cleveland, but you do have a double apex right-hand corner that you feed the power on out to the wall the best that you possibly can. That, yeah, it's not the same experience, and no one's going to confuse the two. You squint your eyes and you look at it a little bit, and suddenly like, I think I've seen this before. And it's that comparison that is the most surprising thing, because I knew what I was getting into ahead of time with the Champ cars when the announcement was made that Reza Studios was going to be doing this track and releasing it alongside late 90s Champ cars. And all this good stuff. I knew what to expect from that standpoint. I knew I would enjoy it, but I didn't realize that I would be comparing it to one of my favorite tracks in all the world, as well as the track that I've probably legitimately have done more laps of in sim racing than anything else. Literally, I cannot think of a track I've done more laps than Sebring, partly because of the amount of good quality versions of Sebring that have always been available in sim racing, as well as the fact that it doesn't have an 8-minute long lap in many cars. I have to strongly suggest that you go ahead and try the Super V8 at Cleveland, because that is some of the most fun I've had with that car in a long while. Certainly in Automobilista 2, as I've never really been a fan of the Automobilista 2 version of that car, but give it a go, because it is a blast when you're going to spend about 3/4 of the lap at part throttle, just slipping and sliding, and just trying to ride that edge before you end up kicking the rear out too far, or alternatively, just not having enough slip in the car. It's fun. When you get a good lap and the left, right, and then the double apex right-hander basically just becomes one non-stop string of just waiting and letting the car do its thing, it is a strangely hypnotic, glorious thing that you just can't help but want more of. And fortunately, because the lap time is so short, more of that is 30 seconds away. Like, you just get the best parts. It's all killer, no filler. And I want to go ahead and close this off with a thought that's related but not directly here. And that is, there's so many of these circuits that exist within sim racing where there's just never been a quality version released, and therefore there's just never been a quality version of the experience released. We have no shortage of the headlining tracks in sim racing. You know, the Spas and the Silverstones, the Laguna Secas of the world. Those are basically expected in every single racing game ever at this point. But in my opinion, the circuits that are much more interesting are the ones that you don't get to experience in every single video game. Because you know what? I've done a billion laps around Spa, but I haven't done a billion laps around Cleveland. Before, just about an hour before recording this commentary, I had not experienced Cleveland with a definitely not V8 supercar. And come to find out that, yeah, that's actually really awesome, and I'm going to do some more of that. Wrapping up the soapbox thing here, you know what? GT3 cars at Spa, it's the white bread of the sim racing world. You go into the store, at least here in America, maybe grocery stores are way different in the rest of the world, there's always white bread on the shelves. You know, like, it's the bog standard. If there's not white bread, you get a little suspicious because you either missed the restocking and they're all sold out, or alternatively, we're doing one of them hoarding things again, and you missed the memo, right? But right next to there is generally like the wheat bread, you know, and then you get some of the more exotic breads. You get your sourdoughs and all this stuff, and your artisanal crafted. You know what? Sometimes it's good to grab some of those breads. You know, sometimes it's good to be like, hey, you know what? That bread exists for a reason. I'm going to make me a sandwich with that bread, and that bread is going to make the sandwich with like the exact same ingredients. It's going to be something special compared to that boring old white bread, ham and cheese. I'm sorry. I don't know where I'm going with this, but hopefully you understand. I'm definitely actually hungry right now, and that's probably why I'm talking about bread and sandwiches, because sandwiches are go-to. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Alright, bye.